a little experience that they have, both from rural and urban perspectives, but also what they think of what they've heard and any suggestions they have. So talking a little bit about their experience, and they were arguing here about who should go first, and I'm going to go with Manley for experience like I mentioned, he's been a corn and soybean farmer, about 50 years of commercial beekeeping. So.
Okay, Rick, thank you. I guess I'd just like to start by congratulating the efforts that are going on in Minnesota. It's exciting to me to see this concerns and the amount of interest that there's in it across diverse peoples, diverse occupations, and I think it's something that we recognize with our pollinators. They're in the same environment we are, and to do what we can to provide expansion of those numbers and habitat is really commendable. So I just congratulate you, Rick, on you and the legislature on what you folks have done. I think it's, we actually live in Iowa. We're real close to where, to Minnesota, to some property that Rick has down there, and that's how our connection was kind of made. But as Rick said, we're commercial beekeepers. My wife back there, Linda, we're about 51 years in the business, and we started out back kind of in the Stone Age, I guess you could kind of say, because it was a totally different environment at that time. The markets were soft as far as honey was concerned, because it was an overabundance of honey being produced, and colony health was by and large excellent. We had very few real bad pathogens that we were dealing with. Did not realize our environment was as good as it was at that time. We just thought it was a natural. Well, through these years, we've seen this, I would call it kind of a reverse of evolution that's actually going on. Colony numbers decline, even in our immediate area, which is just south of Fillmore County. I can remember prior, probably 1988, 1989, when Fillmore County had probably 16,000 colonies of bees. And if we had more time, I'd list you those beekeepers, those commercial people that were running those bees. And so it was a productive area, or they wouldn't have been there. But as time went along, we got into the 90s, and the parasitic mites appeared. First the tracheal mite, which infects the breathing of the honeybee, plus other things, and then of course the varroa mite. These numbers plunged in Fillmore County to the point that I would have said that there was not more than 400 colonies left in the entire county. And since that time, there has not been a large increase in colony numbers. So you can envision the pressure that the commercial beekeepers have kind of gradually assumed. Fillmore may be more dramatic in some of the other counties, but it just, the change in agriculture methods is a big contributing factor to what occurred. And as Becky mentioned, the pathogens of the hive have also been a factor. But we're also being influenced in another rather dramatic way that's been difficult to prove. And I just completed a year on I don't know if you want to call it a board, but it's actually a pollinator consortium. And it was made up of 2 beekeepers, machinery manufacturers, seed companies, and members of pollinator groups. And and chem companies that had really provided the funding that was going to go into 3 research projects. And those research projects basically wound up being Guelph, one in Guelph, one in Ohio State, and one in Iowa State. And the main problem that they wanted to research out was the corn dust that's basically a result of when pneumatic corn planters are planting seed corn, because there's so much neonic material applied to the seeds become sticky. And in order to make sure that they're planting uniform distance of the kernels, they have to incorporate a talc. And the talc helps lubricate the seeds as air pressure moves them through the tubing that goes to the various rows. Well, when this talc and neonic material is voided, because it has to be voided because there's air pressure driving the seed back through the plastic tubes, that's voided in the environment. And different years, different conditions, it's highly variable. But the consortium was about researching the dust aspect of it and finding out the drift levels, what bees were doing at the time of corn planting, and very little effort went into really checking the colony health, but it involved researching the dust aspect of it. So about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, the reports, the research grants, which amounted to, I think, close to 300,000 divided up between the 3 areas, finally became public, and it was put together, and it was interesting to find out what came out of it, because number one, they found that bees at the time of corn planting were working trees, blooming trees and bushes in close proximity to the cornfields. There was very little evidence that they were on the dandelions that could be blooming in the cornfield when a no-till application was applied. And went on to say, and I don't want to use up too much time, that basically the end result that for 2 weeks they had created a toxic environment with the neonic dust situation from the corn planters. And this was a uniform across all 3 research areas, Guelph, Ohio, and Iowa State. So that's one of the things that beekeepers are dealing with, and they're having a great deal of difficulty pinning it down tight because it's a unique material. We experienced a bee kill for the first time in our career 2 years ago. And we found dead bees in front of every hive, in every yard, in a 2.5 county area. And it amounted to something over 500 and some colonies. And we went through the full protocol on having it checked by pesticide people. They had to take the samples and put it through a lab, and the lab was in Iowa. It took about 4 months before the lab got results back. The results came back showing none of this materials, the neonics, were present. And as we learned afterwards, ultraviolet sun readily breaks these materials down in something over 2 or 3 hours. So it's elusive, hard to pin down, but we've never had a toxic event like that before. I gave a presentation in Iowa State when there were a lot of the players involved, like have been on the consortium, was asked the question, because I had a screen about the size of this wall, and it's pretty dramatic, showing beehives with dead bees in front of it. But asked the question, what killed the bees? I had to say, I don't know. because there was no proof of what had killed them, and I never gained proof by the lab tests either, due to what I'm saying I feel is the ultraviolet effect on the bees exposed. So again, it's difficult, but when you go back to the CCD thing, the colony collapse situation, I've got several good friends. In fact, one of my best friends was the person that this was discovered with. And in '06 was when this happened. CCD became a term, and that's when our neonics were left out of the chute. And they never followed, EPA never followed the full protocol on what was needed for their release. A petition was circulated about 2-3 years ago. I have no idea how many people signed that petition. It was presented to EPA. EPA said we'll study it for another 5 years. Now, just on a follow-up on this, so I don't want you to think I'm blindsided, these neonics applied to seed can be very beneficial for individual farmers. I mean, they're a tool, and they're helping people that have certain problems overcome those harmful insect problems. But the status of it is, as myself as a grower, a corn grower, I cannot order corn seed that doesn't have neonics on it. It's mandatory that this material is on everything except organic seed. And there's 96 million acres of corn planted across the United States last year. You can about imagine the amount of material that was put into the soil, and its half-life is greater than what we've been told, especially in cool, damp soils. It can linger, and from that point, I don't know if we know. But again, back to the fact, it is a tool of the farmer, and it is used to help control problem pests he has, and pests that can occur. But this blanket application of these materials, when it isn't even known if we need them, puts us in a different light than I think we've ever been in before. So that's kind of the side thing on one of the things that is bothering beekeepers, beehives, and what have you. Besides the habitat factor that you're addressing here, going to go about addressing and improving. And as Becky so very well stated when she had this graph up here showing the interconnected parts of all this contributing to honeybee decline, that's very, very good research that's went into that, and there's a lot to it. And it's important. And I guess as beekeepers, one of the things that gets tossed out is we hope that honeybees are not the canary in the mine for mankind, because it isn't really bright. And it's not that people can't still do it and be productive, but it takes a lot more effort, a lot more time, and you're dealing with things today that can be negative that you can't visually see. And visual management has always been a big part of beekeeping, but you're dealing with things today that are very difficult to determine what the negative part of it is.